They said the first time you get fired, it stings like betrayal. They were wrong. It didn't sting. It burned, slow and deep, like acid slipped under my skin, too late to stop. I wasn't the type to cry over a job. I'd survived enough sharp corners in life to know when something was broken beyond fixing. But what I hadn't expected was to be punished for doing the right thing. That's the part that sat in my chest for weeks like a heavy stone. It started on a Wednesday, quiet, gray, and forgettable. I was just 3 weeks into a new position in the cyber risk department at Kaizen Tech, a firm known more for its slick branding than its ethical backbone. I had been promoted early, mostly because I didn't ask for much and got results fast. They liked that about me, until I found something they didn't want anyone to find. It was a breach, a real one, hidden deep in a client report that had been finalized by Braden Cole, our freshly hired VP of Strategic Risk. He was the type that wore charm like a second skin and used buzzwords like armor, synergy, transparency, resilience. But his numbers didn't add up, and in cybersecurity, numbers never lie. When I traced the discrepancies, I saw it, a cover-up. An internal breach had exposed sensitive client data 2 months before, and instead of reporting it, Braden had buried it under polished metrics and adjusted dashboards. He signed off on the lie. It wasn't a mistake. It was surgical. I documented everything: emails, system logs, access history. I took it straight to compliance. And that's when everything changed. The following Monday, HR scheduled a performance review. It wasn't a review. It was a silent execution. They called it misalignment with the company's values. That's what they wrote in the formal notice. Misalignment, as if my integrity didn't align with their cowardice. I asked for specifics. They gave me smiles. I asked if it had anything to do with Braden. They said, "This is not about any individual." I asked if I could speak to someone on the board. They told me the decision is final. And just like that, the badge was gone. My inbox locked. My name scrubbed from the team's Slack. I packed my things in a box that felt heavier than it should have. Walked past the same receptionist who had complimented my blazer 2 days ago, and stepped into the elevator like a ghost. No goodbyes, no explanations, just silence. What made it worse was the pretending. The people who saw it happen, coworkers I shared lunch with, teammates I pulled all-nighters beside, none of them reached out. They watched me disappear like I was contagious. Yet someone did call, a private number. It was Evelyn West, one of the board advisors. I didn't know her well, only that she rarely spoke in meetings and had a reputation for sharp instincts. She didn't waste time. "Lena," she said, "don't fight this. Not now. You were right, but this isn't a fair game. You're not safe in it." I asked her what she meant. She paused. "You just walk through a door, and they think they've closed it behind you. Let them think that." Then she hung up. I didn't sleep that night. I lay awake staring at the ceiling, Evelyn's words bouncing through my skull like quiet warnings. That's when the bitterness set in, not from being fired, but from realizing how easy it had been for them, how disposable I was to a company I had defended like it mattered. But Evelyn was right. They thought I was gone. They had no idea I was just getting started. The first thing I did after the call with Evelyn was power off my phone and toss it in the kitchen sink. It didn't feel symbolic. It felt necessary. I'd spent the last few years swimming in the same digital current as everyone else. Emails, pings, geotags, synced calendars. And now I was supposed to disappear. Not because I wanted to, but because if I didn't, they'd find a way to erase more than just my name off a payroll. When Evelyn said, "You're not safe in it," she meant it literally. I left my apartment that night with nothing but a backpack, cash, one clean laptop with no connections to me, a burner phone still in shrink wrap, and an old passport. I didn't run. I moved, deliberately, calmly, like a piece on a chessboard that had been underestimated. That's how you survive when people in power are watching. You shrink, you blend, and you let them forget. I went to the one place no algorithm would think to check, my uncle's cabin 2 hours outside the city, tucked behind a disused logging road and camouflaged in a thicket of pines. It hadn't seen electricity in years, and the plumbing was a bucket and a prayer. But it was quiet, hidden, and in the silence, I could finally breathe. The first few days felt strange. I had nowhere to be, no deadlines, no curated inbox telling me what to do every 10 minutes. Just me, the woods, and the hum of fear settling into something sharper. Resolve. I spent that week mapping everything. Not just what I knew, but what I didn't. I listed the files I'd saved before I was locked out, screenshots, metadata, internal memos. I still had the encrypted USB I always kept as backup. Some habits die hard. Good thing. Because on that USB was the real gold. A report Brayden had sent to a partner firm with forged security metrics. A comparison with the internal draft revealed exactly where and how he had manipulated the data. And then I remembered something small, stupid, and easy to overlook. A shared folder I had access to when I first onboarded. It was a temp directory, something the IT team forgot to revoke access to after the first week. Most people never checked it. But I had once noticed Brayden uploading videos into it. Status updates, meeting recordings. I didn't think much of it at the time. Now I did. I booted the offline laptop, connected through a VPN routed through 3 countries, and reached into the folder with my old cached credentials. Miraculously, they still worked. There were 8 videos. I downloaded all of them. No timestamps, no titles. I watched them in the dark, one by one. The 6th video changed everything. It wasn't a meeting. It was a conversation. Unedited, raw, and clearly not meant for the folder. Brayden sat alone in a conference room on a call. The voice on the other end wasn't clear, but Brayden spoke like he was reporting up. He outlined how the breach was contained, how Lena thinks she's cleaning up a mistake, and how if this goes to the board, Evelyn will be the first to turn. Then he said it. By the time she notices, she'll be out. Fired, quiet, clean, no trail. My blood ran cold. He hadn't just lied. He had planned it. All of it. I was the distraction, the cleanup crew, and the scapegoat, rolled into one. And Evelyn? The one who warned me? She was supposed to fold, but she didn't. I finally understood. I wasn't the only one Brayden underestimated. By the end of that night, the fear was gone. In its place, a plan began to form. They thought I had vanished, but I was watching. And soon I'd make sure they knew I hadn't gone anywhere. The morning after I found the video, I woke up with a clarity I hadn't felt in months. Not peace, that was too far off. But purpose. I no longer felt like I was running. I was digging. And I knew exactly where to start. I couldn't take Brayden down with just one video. He'd call it taken out of context, doctored, a deep fake even. And the board would eat it up. No. I needed proof of the whole thing. The system, the fraud, the cover-up. The structure had to collapse under its own weight, not just crack at the edges. First step, figure out who Brayden was reporting to. Because that voice on the call, it wasn't someone from our company. Brayden doesn't grovel like that unless there's power involved. Real power. Corporate, political, maybe even regulatory. That changed the game. I started tracing external communications from the files I'd pulled. Anything with metadata pointing to third-party servers, consulting partners, shell vendors. One name kept recurring, hidden in contractor documents. Monarch Insights. On paper, they were a boutique data auditing firm. But that was a shell. Their address led to a WeWork office, and their phone number rang once, then disconnected. It smelled like a front. And Brayden had been sending them weekly data dumps from our department for months. The more I dug, the more I saw how deep it went. Monarch had its hands in 3 other companies that had all miraculously survived security scandals with no board fallout. Same pattern. Whistleblower appears, data gets sealed, the story dies, the company stock bounces back. I made a flowchart on the cabin wall. Pins, strings, post-its, the whole cliché. But it wasn't a conspiracy wall. It was a blueprint. Brayden wasn't cleaning up messes. He was managing risk, engineered scandals that they could profit from, sell short on the company just before the breach, buy back when it stabilized, leak only what they could control, use people like me to cover the rest. I felt sick. I had been the mop for a crime scene staged to manipulate the market. But it also made something else click. Evelyn's warning. "Don't contact me directly," she'd said. "You'll lead them to me." At the time, I thought it was fear, but maybe it was a strategy. Maybe she knew more, and she was waiting for me to find it on my own. I activated the burner phone, and for the first time in days, I sent a message. "Got the 6th video. Monarch is the link. Need eyes inside. You in?" 5 minutes passed. No response. I thought maybe I'd blown it. Then a reply blinked through. "In waiting. I've got access to Braden's calendar and 2 months of encrypted Slack logs. Let's burn this down." I didn't smile. I didn't cry. I felt something else. Ready. That night, I sifted through the Slack messages Evelyn sent. Buried deep in the channels was a transcript of a meeting between Braden, Monarch reps, and someone with the handle K-Lantern. Not a name. A signal. That alias appeared in every major decision thread across 3 companies. Always private channels. Always masked. I couldn't prove it yet, but I knew. Whoever K-Lantern was, they weren't just Braden's boss. They were the architects, and I was going to find them. But the deeper I dug, the louder the silence grew. No more videos. No more paper trails. Monarch stopped responding to pings. Evelyn said the logs were vanishing in real time. We weren't the only ones watching anymore. Someone knew we were close. So I did the last thing they'd expect. I booked a ticket back to the city. Because hiding wouldn't finish this. But walking into the fire, that might. Returning to the city felt like stepping onto a stage where I'd already been marked for execution. Every crosswalk beep, every subway screech, every security camera felt aimed at me. I knew I was being watched. I just didn't know by whom. Yet. I wore a cap pulled low, a scarf even though it was warm, and kept my phone in a Faraday pouch. Evelyn warned me that as soon as I re-entered the city grid, they'd know. Monarch's digital reach was vast. Still, I had to be here. Some things could only be done face to face. We met in an old library Evelyn had access to, the kind of place no one visits anymore unless they're looking to be forgotten. She looked thinner than I remembered, but sharper too. Her eyes were wired, burning with sleeplessness and purpose. "You brought everything?" she asked. I nodded and handed her a drive. Every file I pulled, every trace Monarch left behind. She plugged it into her laptop, already surrounded by patched-together scripts and data maps. We worked in silence for a long time, just syncing files, decoding messages, and building timelines. The more we laid out, the clearer it became. Monarch was laundering information. They scrubbed data leaks to fit narratives they could manipulate, then sold access to the clean version to hedge funds, regulators, and political players. They were information traffickers. And Braden, he was the puppet who thought he was the puppeteer. "I think I know who Lantern is," Evelyn finally said, "but we'll need proof. And to get it, we need bait." "What kind of bait?" I asked, already knowing the answer. "You." She laid out the plan. Leak a decoy dataset suggesting I had a full audit of Monarch's offshore accounts, plus client names. We'd push it out through a secured journalist network, enough to scare Lantern into a response. As they moved to intercept it, we'd trace the relay nodes. We wouldn't catch them, not yet, but we'd get close. It worked faster than expected. Within 12 hours, 3 burner emails I'd never used before got phishing attempts. One of them embedded code tracing back to a private data server in Singapore, one that Evelyn had flagged weeks earlier as part of Monarch's clean room. We were closing in, but we weren't fast enough. I should have known when the street outside the library went quiet. No sirens, no cars, just the hum of static, almost like a television left on in another room. I should have trusted the pit in my stomach. Instead, I went to refill my coffee. When I came back, Evelyn was gone. Her laptop was still warm, her bag open, no sign of struggle, just absence, the kind that tells you someone vanished in under 30 seconds. There was only one clue, a single post-it left on the screen. "Run, not alone." My mind reeled. How did they find us? Had they traced the decoy file? Or had Evelyn been playing a double game this whole time? I didn't know, but I knew what I had to do. I wiped the drives, set fire to the backup logs in the alley dumpster, and I left. Not because I gave up. Because I knew now the stakes were bigger than me or Evelyn, Lantern wasn't just protecting a business. They were protecting someone. And whoever that someone was, they were willing to disappear people like her to keep the truth buried. This wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about exposure. And I wasn't walking away. I was setting the trap again. Only this time, I wouldn't be the bait. They would. They thought I would run. And I did. Just not away. I went underground, deeper than before. Changed my appearance, my name. I scrubbed my digital shadow to the bone. Evelyn had taught me how to vanish. Now I would use that silence like a weapon. They made one mistake when they took her. They left me alive. For weeks, I became a ghost in the machine. I stopped thinking like Lena the analyst and started thinking like them, like Lantern. I reconnected with whistleblowers Evelyn had introduced me to, a splintered web of ex-Monarch employees and privacy activists scattered across countries. Most had gone silent after the takedowns. Some still carried guilt. But one thing united us. We wanted the truth out. We worked from the dark, assembling a picture of Monarch's true client list, its shell companies, its data laundering routes. We used the same weapon the Monarch had used against the world, information. Only now we wielded it with surgical precision. What we found wasn't just a corruption ring. It was a mirror. Monarch didn't just sell data. They manufactured reality. Using their algorithms, they could bury a scandal before it broke, redirect political narratives, spike fear or hope in targeted populations. Monarch was the invisible hand behind more than I ever guessed. Protests, market crashes, even one peace treaty I used to be proud of supporting. None of it organic. All of it was orchestrated. And at the center of it all, a name I didn't expect. Braden Holloway. The puppet was the puppeteer. He'd faked his own betrayal, his own fall from grace, all to root out internal threats and expose dissenters like Evelyn and me. He was Lantern. Evelyn had guessed it. She must have. His fake disgrace gave Monarch the illusion of accountability. Meanwhile, he consolidated control under a new alias, steering everything from the shadows. I felt sick, not just at him, at myself, forever believing he was the kind of man who could be saved. So I set my final trap. I leaked a fabricated trove of documents, supposedly files from Monarch's AI architecture project, to a global media consortium, attaching Braden's real identity and codenames. But the real payload wasn't the leak. It was the backdoor. Hidden inside the files was a fingerprint, a digital marker only Monarch's internal system could decode. Once opened by someone inside their network, it would trace the relay path and expose the server housing Monarch's private network. Braden took the bait. Within 48 hours, an anonymous internal request pinged the file, and in that instant, we saw it all. Every IP, every shell server, every line of raw data they thought was safe. Evelyn's disappearance logs, the blacklists, the bribe ledgers, and the footage of her being taken. She wasn't killed. She was being held. Braden had built a digital prison for his enemies. Deep fake identities, falsified legal records. He'd erased people, but they were still alive. We had what we needed. The final release happened 2 days later. News outlets across 10 countries received a synchronized dump. Regulators, too. Whistleblowers reappeared. Protests ignited. Braden's name trended worldwide before he even knew he was exposed. By the time the warrants were issued, he'd gone into hiding. But this time we were ahead. I flew to Geneva using an old ID Evelyn once created for herself. Waited at a cafe across from a bank tied to Monarch's slush fund. And I saw him, older, thinner, wearing someone else's face, but I recognized the way he carried himself. Arrogant, careful. He didn't notice me. I didn't approach him. I just watched as agents closed in. It wasn't the satisfaction I felt. It was something quieter, justice. Weeks later, I received an encrypted message. One line. Print you. She was free. And so was I. I'd started this journey, thinking I was trying to uncover corruption. But what I really found was myself. Not just a woman who used to believe in the system, but someone who had the courage to break it and rebuild something better.